Bend the knee!
Hello, Mogolis, everybody. This is Don Willie back again for another edition of Game of Thrones Season 6. Will it happen in the books? And today I'm going to be talking about Episode 9, Battle of the Bastards. And this one was a little more difficult than I actually expected it to be. You know, we only actually get two set pieces, that being Meereen and then Winterfell, and even though we only get those two primary storylines, because so much is different from the books, I'm going to have to do things a little differently than I normally would and juggle some characters around to make things kind of fit with the situations that are going on and not so much the actual characters doing these actions themselves. So, first off, let's take it to Meereen. So, in Meereen, we see that the city is under siege from the wise masters, great masters, whatever masters. Daenerys has come back, and she and Tyrion are having a debate as to how this should all be handled. Tyrion comes up with the idea to give the masters an ultimatum, which is basically that they surrender or Daenerys is going to wind up destroying everything they have. And we see, it works like gangbusters. She is able to swoop down with Drogon and also the other two dragons. She burns some of their fleet just enough to let them know that she is not playing games. And she does her thing on that level. Then we have Tyrion informing the masters that, look, one of you is gonna have to die. And they put up the outsider, the gentleman who is not part of the ruling elite class. And it is at this point that we get a nice little scene from Grey Worm where he slits the other two masters' throats. Next we have Tyrion, who tells the remaining master, go back and tell everyone else what you have seen here, and also that if anything else happens, we will not hesitate to annihilate you. Also, we get the Dothraki with Daario at the head of the army, coming and literally chopping the head off of Sons of the Harpy. So it remains to be seen whether or not Daario is truly the quote-unquote Harpy or not. But at the end of it all, we have Daenerys triumphant over the Masters once and for all, and possibly ready to go to Westeros. So, the question that we have here is, will Daenerys actually use her dragons in war to quell the Masters and finally bring an end to the conflict at Slaver's Bay? And will this be the thing that propels her to want to go to Westeros after finally maintaining order and peace? And for this one, I think we would have to definitely say yes. We know that she currently has Drogon with her. She's with the Dothraki, but listen, let's be honest here. We know that she is going to wind up doing some serious damage to Slaver's Bay, but not as much, as it will be possibly in King's Landing later on. So, yeah, Daenerys coming back with the dragons, coming back to take things over, and will definitely wreck shop and bring an end to that conflict. Then later on, we get the scene with Yara Greyjoy, Theon Greyjoy, and they're in the throne room with Daenerys, trying to plead in order to make an alliance so that they can have back the Iron Islands from Euron, who has come and decided to make himself king. And, there's a lot of little back and forth here, and Daenerys finally says, hey, well, look, If you support my claim as Queen of the Seven Kingdoms, then I will grant you the Iron Islands, barring that you basically end your piratous ways. Yara Greyjoy relents and agrees, and they come to an accord. But in the books, way different. Asha Greyjoy and Theon Greyjoy are currently captives of Stannis Baratheon in the north, and it is actually Victarion Greyjoy who is on his way to Slaver's Bay. So, the question here is, could we see a deal struck between Victarion Greyjoy and Daenerys Targaryen in order for him to become the ruler of the Iron Islands and help Daenerys go back to the Seven Kingdoms? And for this one, I am going to say yes. I mean, a lot of people have gotten on Victarion as being an idiot. I mean, when he talked about, sailing the Dothraki Sea and just his whole interplay with his brother Euron. I mean, look, the man has been through a lot. I mean, we learned a lot about Euron in this upcoming Winds of Winter chapter. And yeah, I just think that people don't give Victarion the credit that he deserves because they look at him as a brute with absolutely no particular thoughts in his head whatsoever. But I do think that we will get some forethought from him and that it will be something very interesting. So yeah, I say yes to this one. This will be a great alliance. So moving right along now to the north. So we get a parlay between the Stark forces and the Bolton forces, and as we all know, it was not going to go well whatsoever. We have threats back and forth, we have demands back and forth, and finally it ends with Sansa telling Ramsay that he will die and to sleep well. So the question that remains here is, will there be some sort of back and forth parlay between potential Stark forces and Bolton forces under the command of Ramsay Bolton? For this one, I am going to say no. I think that the situations are so vastly different that we will not see Stark forces versus the Boltons, even though I think that would be pretty epic if we did. I mean, all signs point to Stannis winning the Battle of Ice. He's got great tactics and strategy on his side, and he has great battle command experience on his side, so I don't see there being a remnant of the Bolton army to fight against any Stark forces to begin with. Next up, we get the War Council, where we have Davos, Jon, Tormund, and Sansa. After they plan their initial trap to try to bring the Bolton forces into a pincer move, we see that Sansa actually has a back and forth with Jon because she felt as though her counsel was not even asked for. But Sansa makes the mistake of not informing Jon that there are other options. Later on, we have Jon go to see Melisandre. Jon demands that if he is killed in battle, not to be brought back. Melisandre says, "I do not serve you. I serve the Lord of Light. So if he wants you to be back, coming back, there's nothing you can do about it. Deal with it, kid." And so ultimately the question that comes out of this one is, will Jon demand that he not be brought back again once he has been resurrected by Melisandre? And for this one, I'm going to say no. I think after he is brought back again, we will already be headed to the War for the Dawn against the White Walkers And it's going to be one of those things where he's just not going to have time to even think about it. I think after the whole chaos at Castle Black and after things south of even the gift go on, I mean, I just don't think he's going to have time. You know? Yeah. So that's how I'm calling that. Next up, we get a shot of Davos, and Davos has found the burned stag. He has found where Shireen was burned on that pyre, and he is definitely not happy about this one. And man, we already know there's gotta be some sort of reckoning. This cannot stand whatsoever. And so the question out of this one is, will Davos be the one to find out that Melisandre has burned Shireen, and will this make him beyond pissed, so much so that he might try to kill her in the future? And for this one, I'm going to say no, only because in the books, Davos is not as close with Shireen as he has been in the show. Her closest confidant is the fool Patchface. And though Patchface has issues, I mean, I do think he would still have a major problem with Melisandre burning her. And yeah, if anything, it would be Patchface who would have the issue, not Davos. Davos has his own stuff he's dealing with right now. Next up, we have Battle Day. So we have Ramsay Bolton bringing out Rickon, telling him to run. Run, Rickon, run. Run to your brother if you can, and see if you can possibly save yourself. And before Rickon is able to be scooped up by his big brother Jon, he was ultimately shot down by Ramsay Bolton with an arrow through the heart. And oh boy, another Stark death. And this one of the youngest one of them all, after all he's had to deal with. Rest in peace to Rickon. But the question remains, will Rickon die in the book? Will he meet a violent end as he did in the TV show? And though I hate to say it, I'm going to have to go with yes. I mean, look, we have the only Stark, other than Robb, to not have his own point of view chapters. And maybe that might have been, because he was only like 3 at the time, and probably by the time we get to A Dance with Dragons or Winds of Winter, it'd be, 5, 6, something like that. So he's still a young kid, but, we have learned that no one is immune from death in this particular series. And if you know anything about the whole trope of the Shaggy Dog story, Shaggy Dog story is something that is hyped up to be something huge and then turns out to be nothing. So unfortunately, it's looking like that's what we're going to get with Rickon as well. So so next up there is the battle, the big battle right outside of Winterfell. This is the one for all the marbles. This is the one where the rubber meets the road, where everything is on the line for the Stark forces. And they look like they are about to be defeated, permanently crushed by the Boltons. And then in comes Veil Ex Machina. Now, I know people might have a problem with the term Ex Machina, but look, let's be honest, Jon had no inkling that there were going to be any forces coming to his rescue should things fall apart, and neither did Ramsay, which was kind of crazy because you figured he should have had some kind of scouts. But this leads to a retreat by Ramsay back to Winterfell, and the question here is, will we see sort of an ex machina force that comes to help out an army against the Boltons. And for this one, I am going to say yes. And I think it is going to be the house that we did not see in the show, and that is the Manderleys. I think that it could be possible that we have some sort of issue where Stannis is kind of in a dire straits, and just as things are going awry, in come the Manderley forces, turning their cloaks against the Boltons and helping to defeat them at the Battle of Winterfell. So, Manderleys, count on it. Next up, we have inside of Winterfell. Ramsay Bolton is holed up and he's prepared for a siege, when all of a sudden, Hulk Smash 1-1 comes through, breaks down the gates, and unfortunately is shot down by many an arrow and put out of his misery, unfortunately, by Ramsay Bolton. And so the question for this one remains, will we see the tragic death of 1-1? And for this one, I'm going to have to say yes. I mean, currently he is on a rampage at Castle Black. He has already smashed one of the Queen's men. And I don't think that they are just going to let that lie. I mean, you know, no one knows why he's going on a rampage, but I do suspect that it has something to do with that horn that we heard. You know what horn I'm talking about? Wakes the sleepers. Yeah, so moving right along, we have the very last shot of the episode, and this is the death of Ramsay Bolton. We have Sansa in front of the cage where he's locked up, and the hounds are released upon him. He's still talking smack. He's like, my hounds are loyal. They would never do anything to me. But Sansa reminds him that you have not fed them in 7 days. So would you really think they're just going to stand here and not eat? No. So Ramsay is ripped apart by his own hounds in very poetic fashion, because it is no less than that bastard deserves. So the question remains from this one, even though it is not Sansa who has been tortured by Ramsay, it was Jeyne Poole, will Ramsay have his hounds set upon him so they can feast on his living flesh? And for this one, I am going to have to say yes. I mean, we know in the books that Ramsay actually sets his hounds on people, and he names them after women that he's hunted down. And you know what? It is no less than he deserves. So I can't wait to see Ramsay get his due. Bastard. Anyway, you guys let me know what you think about this. Am I totally off my rocker? Or do I happen to have some good points when it comes to these particular sequence of events? And I will be back next week. Hopefully next week's will be a little easier for me to do, and it won't be so divergent that I will have to shift around characters even to get this done. But you already know the deal. For the rest, rate, comment, subscribe, share. Tell your friends, come back for more. That has been my time. This is Don Willie saying, Valador Harris.